Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duck Bricks. I'm Chris, and over the years, LEGO has created a lot of different LEGO castle sets. From starting off in the early 1970s with the Yellow Castle and going all the way up to modern times, LEGO Castle has been through a variety of different sub-themes, types of builds, from fantasy era to more realistic stuff. But in the past years, we haven't seen that many new LEGO castle sets. Sure, we got the LEGO Ideas Medieval Blacksmith, which was more of a medieval civilian set rather than a castle itself, but other than that, ever since the last castle line kind of died out around the 2013-2015 era, we haven't really seen any other castle stuff until now. Because you see, for the 90th anniversary of LEGO, to celebrate, LEGO put out a massive $400 Lion King's Castle, or Lion Knight's Castle as it's called, set number 10305, with 4,514 pieces. This is the largest castle set that LEGO has ever made, featuring a whopping 22 different minifigures, and has the option to be laid out in a large facade-like wall or to be fully enclosed in a large castle-like structure. Now, being the most expensive and detailed castle ever made, this required a massive review. And here we can see the castle in all its glory. I can't wait to show you all of the details. So let's open up the gate, go inside, and take a look at what this castle has to offer. The castle itself is packed chock full of detail, with a ton of exclusive prints, a nice inner area with a market stall, and a very realistic civilian space. You can see that a lot of love and care went into designing this castle, which is meant to be almost like a sort of remake of the original Lion Knight's Castle, which came out all the way back in the 80s, featuring custom printed flag elements, printed shields, and all sorts of different pieces. This is a really fun set, and it's really cool because once it's fully closed up, you can see that the interior actually is fully detailed even when you open up all of the rooms like so. I kind of wanted to start off not with the set itself, but by taking a quick look at the instructions, which actually are really good. So starting off with the instructions, you may notice that they walk you through some of the major factions in LEGO Castle history, starting off with the Yellow Castle and going all the way up to Nexo Knights in 2016. Of course, that has all led us to 2022 with this massive Lion Knight's Castle, and I really do love this designer photo showcasing the LEGO designers with life-size models, and even talking about the graphical design difference for the actual shield emblem itself. Much like many of the other 18+ or adult Icons LEGO sets, they actually have little callouts in the instructions themselves on almost every other step, which explains something a little bit special about each one of the pieces. There were callouts in the instructions talking about the origin of certain pieces, like how the claw pieces for the thatched roof were originating from the Nexo Knights theme, and then there's just some fun stuff like saying, hey, there's some stuff hidden behind this wall, let's find out and take a look what's inside. But now I think it's time to open up the gate and start off the review of the main Lion Knight's Castle. Alright, so here in all its glory is the Lion Knight's Castle. For 2022, this retailed for $400 and this is the massive castle. You also can expand it from this more compact form into more of a castle wall, which looks a lot more impressive at first, but essentially is just mainly a facade. And the way that the castle is laid out right now is the only way to actually have it fully enclosed, and is basically the way that you're intended to have the castle set up. The set comes with a whopping amount of minifigures. There are so many different types of characters here, and we will be taking a look at the actual minifigures at the end of the video, but of course I think it's a good place to start off by just taking a look at the castle itself because there's so much to see here. So obviously on the front gate, the way that this is particularly set up is, let's just get some of this stuff out of the way first, but you have a large entryway ramp that leads up to the castle itself, a drawbridge here which leads you to the main castle, and then some city squares inside the building itself. The gate can be actually opened, much like many of the other LEGO castles, just by cranking a switch at the top. Specifically, if you just turn a gear here, you'll notice that the gate itself is opening, and to close it, you just push another button up here, and the gate just slams shut. The same can be said for the drawbridge itself, which also has its own mechanism that has to actually be actuated from the side here, where if you actually twist this particular gear on the side of the castle, let me just rotate it so you can see this knob here, then the drawbridge closes up in a very satisfying fashion, and it's actually done in a really interesting way, where it specifically allows itself to slide forwards and backwards based on a swing hinge, which is quite interesting because thankfully it does actually bridge the gap thanks to the positioning of the hinge itself. Now, of course, once everything is opened up, you can actually send the minifigures forth from the castle itself, but I think we should start off by taking a look at some of these side features around the exterior of the castle first. Specifically, the front gate can be removed. I'm not super certain if this is a feature, the front ramp can be removed, but this particular piece can actually just detach off. It's only attached by a couple of clips right here and here, so if you wanted to, you could just take off the front ramp. Not really sure why you would want to do that, but it does actually allow some space where you can see a bit of a cave on the inside with a frog hiding inside, so maybe you just want to actually have some more accessible space on the inside of the castle itself. Thankfully, it is very easy to just snap back on. It just snaps right into place, and you can go ahead and continue to rotate the castle. Back here, as we rotate it around this way, we actually have a bit of a forestman's hideout. Let me try to get this in frame here. The way this works is that this rock moves outwards, and then you actually have a bit of a sliding door, so this whole door slides open, which reveals either a secret hiding space right here, which leads to more stuff inside, which you can see right there, or you can see just another forestman hideout right there with some gear for the forestmen themselves. It's a nice feature, and what's really cool is that once you actually have this door open, like so, once you close this, it automatically pushes the door shut, so both entryways to the forestman hideouts are fully sealed up. Now, through the door here, there is a minor door there, which of course you can access. There is a whole forestman area hidden inside, which we'll take a look at when we open up the castle itself, but for now, let's kind of rotate this all around. You can see around the back, this is what the view looks like, and there are some open spaces, but obviously it is meant to be a fully closed up castle here. I love the way that they did the outside window slits, which really feel like very small and narrow windows, but of course, once we open it up, you can take a look at the windows from the other side, and they actually are slanted inwards, much like realistic LEGO windows. The classic LEGO tree piece also is included in the exterior for the first time in dark green, which is a very useful color. Very nice they added that. And I appreciate the inclusion of just extra fun details like a beehive there, some flowers on the windowsill here, some creeping and climbing vines, and of course a water wheel that does activate a function on the inside of the castle, which we'll take a look at once we take a look at the interior of the castle itself. But now let's rotate this all around. Looks like we lost a minifigure back there. One of the black Falcons got knocked off, but let's kind of get him out of the way here and bring our way up back to the front of the castle itself. So, as you can see on the front, there are a lot of things going on just on the exterior of the castle, but obviously the main stuff to see is on the inside. The set does include a couple of the brand new animals for 2022, like the baby lamb here, which was introduced for the farm set, as well as another copy of the nougat cow, which is new for 2022, plus a repeat of the Black Falcon's horse, which first came out in the medieval blacksmith, this time with a brand new specialized armor and cloth element for the horse itself, which is a slightly recolored version of the original one that came out, which came out for the most recent line of LEGO Castle over 5 to 7 years ago. But now I think it is time to open up the gates, so let us slowly rotate this all the way around so we can take a look at all of the goodies on the inside of the build. So to open up the castle, it is very simple. It is a very large build, but thankfully it makes it fairly simple to do. You just kind of split the two parts open, and this castle does separate into two pieces, so you can literally just take one piece off and use it as is. And for the purposes of this review and to showcase the castle in my review studio, we're going to do just that. So let's start off with the main section, which is the gate here. I'm going to get this out of the way and we can move on. With that piece removed, we can make our way to this side of the castle. You can see there is a bit of a cave section underneath, which is pretty cool. They actually did include that. And of course, there is an archway that leads directly into the castle interior itself. And this is essentially what you see from just this part of the castle. Surprisingly, really closed up. If you kind of just imagine that this is covered by a wall and this kind of just leads to a balcony, you could very easily just use this as its own castle, because this looks fantastic on its own. It looks like a gateway or some sort of a castle outpost, and you can really just display two halves of the castle completely separately, which is a really cool touch. But of course, once you open it up, you can see the entire interior here. And this is what you are greeted with, so let's take a closer look. This door right here specifically leads to the Forestmen hideout exterior rock section, so you slid the rock aside to get into the castle through there. On the other side, there is just a dungeon holding a skeleton. Now here is the entrance for the main gate, and as I mentioned before, you just crank the chain up here to open that, and then push down on this bar right here to close it. So super simple. One of my favorite things is that this castle actually does include a lot of printed pieces. There actually are no stickers in this entire set, which means every single shield element is printed, including these classic LEGO castle emblems being printed on modern shields, which is fantastic. And I'm really hoping that the LEGO Bricks and Pieces, or I guess the Pick-a-Brick service now, will be updated to be including these particular elements, because then you can really start to army build classic castle factions at a much more economical scale than bricklinking everything. Now, the first floor is a little bit bare, but it definitely is that by design because they did want to have a lot of open space to actually have the horse ride in and out. I appreciate the effort that has actually been made to store the horse, so this is a bit of a stable for the horse itself, and the way it works is the horse would run out, and then run out of the gate here, and then just come right back in. So he is parked, so to speak, right there in a kind of makeshift holding area for the horse itself. And right here just across we have some weapons and armor. Another fantastic thing about this set itself is that they actually paid a lot of attention to minifigure access, whether it be via stairs or ladders. They actually have all sorts of different things, such that you can climb up the ladder here to get up to this floor, and you can climb up the ladder here to get up to the next floor. They just really paid attention to allowing realistic minifigure access, and you can track the journey of one minifigure through the front gate and all the way to each of the floors. Over here on this side, one thing I didn't mention fully is that this particular gate here, which can be accessed by these stairs going up, which are done really nicely. These are fairly new pieces, but they look really good. But how that works is that actually you twist this gear, and it opens up like so, and you can see a very nice set of stairs leading all the way up to the main castle area. Twist the gear again, and the ladder is removed. It goes back down, and it's super simple because it's just mounted on a rack and pinion system, just like that. So that's exactly how that works, and there you go. Otherwise, to be completely honest, there really isn't that much else to see for this main part of the castle. There's a nice armory up top, but nothing super fancy, and it really just provides you with a lot of room to pose figures and play around with them. One thing I really like is that if you specifically go underneath here, there is a large roomy area that's kind of just empty. You can imagine that you want to hold prisoners there, or maybe hold some animals in there, but it's just a nice section where you can place some figures, and again, just a lot of areas to pose figures all around. Even once it's closed up, you can still see the inside and how good that is. But now, it's time to take a look at the next part of the castle, so I'm going to get this out of the way and take a look at the second section. Alright, so this is what the second part of the castle looks like on its own, and it's a little bit less believable as a standalone thing. Maybe if you angled it in a certain way, it can kind of look like a watchtower, but to be honest, this is very clearly part of a different castle. I'm going to remove the minifigures for now, and just focus in on the build itself, and you can see here that it is done very well. A lot of detailing and rock work on the sides of the kind of details for the castle itself, but again, you just saw this when I turned around the main castle, so let's take a closer look on the inside. So the way this particular piece opens up is you can see the hinges are mounted right there. So what you do is you kind of take this and you try to separate this outwards like so, and that opens up. And this surprisingly is a much more furnished area than the other part of the castle. While the other part mostly focused on medieval related stuff and kind of more minimalist aesthetics, this really leans into the castle being a real living space. And that's one of my favorite parts about this particular area. You can see that you actually have the Lego Yellow Castle being built here as an actual set. I really like how you can actually see certain parts that are still lying on the floor, like it is still just in progress, which is very nice to see. The door itself can be opened up like so to get to this bedroom area, and this I guess is the queen's or princess's bedroom. It kind of has a nice bed here, a letter on the desk, and feels like a very cozy environment even with a fireplace and an awning there. Moving on to here, we have a grand hall area of the castle, which has a piano, another fireplace, and a nice long table, which obviously has been truncated a little bit down in size because it had to be, but I guess that makes sense because you're really trying to fit as many details as you can in a compact space like this. Again, probably my favorite thing about this is the inclusion of the printed knight shields from the original Lego Yellow Castle. These are the prints that appeared in the official set, the original one, but actually I believe that a lot of them were stickers when the first set came out, and it's really interesting seeing these as actual prints because, again, very cool to see those returned for the modern era. Now down here we have the kitchen. If there is a place to eat, there must be a place where meals are prepared, and that is exactly what this is. You have a bit of an oven here and a place to have the pots and pans and some other food being prepared, and you even have a mill right here, so of course as you turn the water wheel, it just simply turns this area of bricks here. Nothing super fancy, it is literally just a standard gear system, but that's actually kind of how actual mills work in real life. It is just a system of gears that instead just has one thing turn another thing, and that's exactly how this works with a bag of grain as well. One of my favorite details here is actually if you lift this up, you can see that right in the back there you have a bit of a fountain or water area. They're using the LEGO Superheroes Action Blast piece for that, which is a great parts usage. It is super cool to see that piece being used as flowing water, and that was one of my favorite parts usages of the entire set, seeing the action battle pieces or blast pieces being used as an actual flowing water element, which makes a lot of sense and really works for the castle as well. Of course, setting this back down carefully, we can move around here to this section, and let's zoom ourselves out just a little bit here. So let's kind of go back out to the main castle. There is a bit of another Forest Men's hideout here. Again, this really leads to the Forest Men's hiding places right here. And what's really cool is if you move the cart aside here, this is actually a trapdoor where the Forest Men can enter the castle themselves. So it seems like they have made a lot of entrances to allow them to actually be able to access this castle, which is a really fun touch. Moving on here, there is again a very clear and linear pathway for minifigure movement, whether they want to enter via the stairs here, which, as you can see, you can go up the stairs to this section or through the corridor to this section of the building right here. So that area is fully open. And of course, these stairs do lead up to the bedroom, which you can see right here. So all in all, it is a very nicely well-proportioned castle with a lot of access being put into the minifigures being able to walk from one floor to another in a very realistic fashion. But that honestly about sums up this particular side of the castle. It is really cool because I actually really appreciate how they deviated a little bit from just the plain grays and really tried to work in some of the classic medieval architecture here with the way that the black and white is set up for the windows here, and the inclusion of the Nexo Knight's claw elements as the thatched roof pieces is a great touch, and I think it works out absolutely fantastically. Now, if I only had one complaint, it is that this tower is basically inaccessible. After so much effort being put into allowing the minifigures to realistically walk from one place to another, you just kind of have to use the hand of God and put a minifigure up in the top part of the castle here, but that is really the only complaint about this particular section, and everything else is really great. So now let's recombine both parts of the castle and move on to the wrap-up. Alright, so here's the two halves of the castle. Let's push them together. They make a very satisfying click. And there you go, the castle has been joined. One thing I really like after the castle is joined is that they specifically angled the rocks to not just join in a straight wall, they wanted to do it at a bit of an angle here, which actually does add some texturing to the walls themselves, and suggests that the walls are a little bit weathered or cracking from age, which is a really cool touch. But of course, I think the question on everyone's mind is the price worth it, $400 for this model? Before we get into that though, I do want to do two things. I want to, one, look at the minifigure selection from this castle itself, and two, actually take a look at what it looks like when it's fully laid out, still connected, but having the whole facade look. After we take a look at that, I want to talk about value because that is the biggest question for this set. So to take a look at the minifigs of the set, I wanted to kind of divide this up into factions because there are simply so many different figures to see here. It makes more sense to take a look at the figures that, to be honest, are mostly the same figure in just different armor. So here are the brand new Lion Knights. This is a complete redesign of the original LEGO Lion Knights from all the way back in the 90s, and it's actually really cool because the instruction manual does have an entire blurb dedicated to how they kind of modernize the logo of the Lion Knights while still keeping it very realistic and reminiscent of the original logo here. One thing I really like is that they actually include a variety of different characters. You have obviously the Queen, who also has a knight's garb to go alongside her. You have a main knight on the front with a similar helmet, and then you have a couple of paladins, archers, and then you have a squire, and even a young knight in training who you can see right here is kind of just by himself and not wielding any particular weapon or armor element. Specifically for the Queen herself, a variety of brand new prints were created that are different from the standard knights, and it's kind of a shame because she just wears a breastplate the entire time, so most of those printing just aren't really seen. Actually, if we isolate the Queen by herself here, let's specifically zoom in and take a look at the figure. This is
I mean, obviously my favorite figure from the set. I'm sure it is most people's favorite figure because of just how detailed it is. Look at that gorgeous cape. It is the older style of cape material, which also does lend itself to the vintage look. And this feels like a cape that LEGO would have made back in the 90s with this style of printing. It is just absolutely fantastic. Now, moving on herself, now you can actually see the Queen just has this particular style of headpiece. I believe this is a new headpiece made for the set, or a new head printing. It's hard to put my finger on exactly why, but it does feel medieval to me. It does feel like a regal queen. I really appreciate the amount of detail here, and it feels like a lot of thought went into the design itself, where that's kind of the more standard queen-like variant here, and this is a more calm and warrior-like stance right here. Now, it does come with a hairpiece to put on the Queen herself, but of course, you can do that if you want to remove the cape and armor, and just have the Queen by herself in her regular garb. Now here you can see, comparing her alongside, say, a standard torso, this is a brand new set of prints here. It is a very nice gold-colored logo, and it just feels a little bit more special than the other knights. Moving on to the back, the pattern continues with the golden buckle and the golden part of the torso there, which again, such a shame that most of it will just be covered up by the armor element, which just sits directly above the piece itself. That being said, it is still a fantastic figure. Only thing that could have made it better is if the armor itself was printed. We do know LEGO does have the technology to print on this armor piece thanks to Lord of the Rings and Avatar: The Last Airbender figures, but of course that really would have required a brand new part to be made, a brand new budget, and they specifically stated in an interview that besides the new prints, they only had the budget to make one brand new element for the set, which was an archway element being used in the castle itself instead of any minifigure pieces. But of course, moving on to the rest of the Lion Knight figures here, let's just get our base plate back up on camera here. You can see that for the most part, these are really well designed with some excellent metallic detailing. I love the facial print inclusions, which obviously most of these facial prints are just reuses from before, but I like that they actually specifically chose some, like the flag blower has his cheeks being blown out like that. You have a actually brand new print. The only new print here is specifically this head for the older guard, and I like how he has two different facial expressions. Definitely feels very medieval to me in the way that his facial hair is set up and the expressions themselves, so that is a really fun one of the very wide laughing smile there. I'm trying to rescue his helmet here. It's kind of difficult holding the base plate in midair with minifigures falling all the way around, but you can see that these are all of the different knights that we have here. And of course they did try to switch up the armor a little bit in that some are wearing armor pieces, some have different helmets, and of course the brand new shield is great to see as well, with the Queen herself having a slightly different variant of the shield with a yellow border and the blue and red backing behind it. But with that, we can move on to the rest of the figures of the set. The set does include a copy of the brand new dark orange horse, which was introduced in January of this year for LEGO City, with a brand new print for the horse armor / cowling piece right here, which looks absolutely fantastic because again, this does truly feel like it was made like a vintage piece. But moving on from the Lion Knights faction, it's time to take a look at the Black Falcons, and the Black Falcons also get a horse of their own. The Black Falcons are some of my favorite knights in terms of the way that they're designed for LEGO Castle, so I really love seeing this particular piece being used, and I like the consistency between this and the Ideas Medieval Blacksmith, which also showed the Black Falcons using this tan horse, which was the set it was introduced in. The cowling looks really good on this with the striking black and blue Black Falcons logo, and I like that they actually are wielding black swords as well. It is a really nice touch. Only 3 Black Falcons figures are included in the set, and only one of them has the shield, but thankfully these were available on bricks and pieces for quite some time, so anyone who wanted multiples was able to get some if they wanted. I like the intersection of different headpieces and armor, although I do kind of miss the Praetorian Guard armor in silver, which is what the original Black Falcons of the Medieval Blacksmith Idea set had. Instead, this particular character right here does feature a backpack, which is pretty cool, feels pretty realistic for a medieval setting, and that backpack is actually using the LEGO City 2019 Sky Police jetpack attachment, so a pretty interesting parts use from a much more modern theme, which makes a lot of sense in context of this particular figure and really does work out in his favor. But of course, these are repeat figures. We have seen these exact torso and leg configurations before, so let's move on to these civilians. The set includes 4 different civilians, 1 wizard, Magisto, 1 baby lamb, and 1 cow. It also does include a small little bird as well on the top of the cart. So zooming into the figures themselves, it's really cool because these actually mostly got brand new prints. The female figure here is featuring a brand new dark green printed dress, which looks really great, and is reusing the style of medieval headpiece, which appeared in a couple collectible minifigures, but not in many other sets, so really cool to see that being used as a figure. And the particular middle figure here, the blacksmith, is reusing the blacksmith outfit from the Ideas medieval blacksmith, but is a completely different character. Kind of cool to see they almost feature a similar uniform. This character here is basically using a one-to-one translation of a classic LEGO castle torso, featuring some sort of a money bag or pouch on his belt there with a sand green aspect to it, which is really fantastic because it does feel like a direct update to a vintage element. The boy here is one of the only figures to include printed arms in the set, and that's because his torso is actually from the collectible minifigure series of characters, which launched earlier this year, featuring a bard as one of the characters, so kind of odd how they actually just took the actual torso from the collectible minifig series, arm printing and all, and put it in this set itself, although I'm not complaining because more arm printing is always good. Moving on, honestly, the big disappointment to me in this set for the figures is Magisto. You see, Magisto is just using a plain blue torso and plain blue skirt. Now, one could argue is that maybe they were trying to make a vintage feel to Magisto, trying to make him feel more akin to the classic figure, but the original Magisto did have torso printing. He had a very prominent pouch on his torso and some magic spells tucked away, and it feels especially disappointing because LEGO just recently released brand new wizard elements for their Build-A-Minifig stations in the US. Let me show you those right now. So in these particular containers, which obviously do not come in the set, but you can get these from any LEGO brand store in the US, you can get basically updated Magisto pieces from there itself. So I guess if you wanted to update him, you could, but it feels very weird for him to just have plain pieces. Let's take a look at what that looks like right now. These are the specialized updated prints from the LEGO Build-A-Minifig station. Notice that this figure is so detailed that he actually has the stars and moon pattern continuing onto the back of the skirt, and this is literally a one-to-one update of the classic Magisto. He had the same pouch, he had the same exact detailing on his pieces. It feels like this was specifically made for this set, but for whatever reason was included in the Build-A-Minifig pieces. And it's very odd comparing him against the very plain standard Magisto we get in the set. So let's take a look at what he looks like specifically using his brand new outfit. And I'm just going to take his head and beard here, stick that on, and doesn't that feel a lot better to you having so much more printing on the figure? If they were trying to go for a retro look and feel, they could have just easily reprinted the minifigures to classic versions and had them use classic smiley faces. But since every other figure in the set is so detailed and Magisto is the only figure who isn't, it feels very odd to me that he doesn't actually feature that much more detail. But thankfully, just for $10, you can get multiple copies of these particular torsos and legs from the Build-A-Minifig stations in the US, so if you're in the US, definitely take advantage of that, and thankfully, because they are so prominent, you can easily just get a couple on Bricklink if you are not in the US. Lastly, I do want to discuss the animal molds. The baby lamb is adorable. I love that they are doing more baby animals, and it's good to get this in a set that isn't just the very overpriced city farm. The same goes for the nougat cow as well. Obviously, you're spending more money by getting this set, but now if you wanted the cow and baby lamb, and you already were planning on getting the castle, you don't also have to get the $70 farm, and the cow is really great returning to LEGO's portfolio after many years in absence. Now if only they could make the goat return too. And finally, we have the forest men. If you were able to get the free gift with purchase for the little Forest Outpost set, which was free for a certain amount of money being spent on LEGO.com and in LEGO stores about a month before the castle came out, which was a little unfortunate because that meant people who bought the castle didn't get it. Anyways, these are the Forest Men. They do repeat from the GWP, but the pieces were made for the set. My favorite print here is the facial expression on the center Forest Men there. This is a new print made for the set itself, and that just feels perfect. That just screams Forest Men to me. So that is fantastic, love that printing, and it's cool to see the lute or guitar-like piece recur from the collectible minifigs as well. They're a lot plainer compared to the other minifigures in the set. Obviously they are just using plain green legs, but it definitely does work for their aesthetic. I just wish that they had the budget to give us different colors, because of course, the Forest Men did not just wear red and green, you had some blues, you had some yellows in the different colors, with green being the predominantly main color on the back, so it would have been cool to see different colors of Forest Men in the set, but absolutely was not a priority in terms of allocating budget to the figures, so I'm pretty happy with what we get in general. Lastly, I want to showcase exactly what the castle looks like when you actually fold everything outwards, kind of like what you see on the box art itself. Now obviously this form right here is the fully enclosed form, and while it may not look super fantastic from the front alone, it might not feel like it's worth that much, obviously as you can see it is fully closed up in the back. So what happens if we actually convert it to the facade mode and try to showcase what it looks like with all of the fully length walls spread out? So in this configuration, as you can see, the rooms are just fully connected and spread out here. I do like how you can actually configure one room to another and have one room lead to the next, but as you can see here, as you rotate it all the way around, it actually does look really good and really large from the front. So obviously it is a bit of a trick. It definitely does not have this much density to it when it's all fully closed up, but there you can see this feels like a much larger castle. And it's really interesting how just one simple change in configuration makes you feel like you're getting a lot more value for your money, regardless of where you fall on whether or not this is worth $400. So taking a closer look at this particular configuration, this is another really interesting one for display. While the enclosed version definitely makes a lot more sense for play, you can really see that the gate can open up here and you can just enter your minifigures into the castle itself, and if you had a lot of extra bricks, you could probably just build around this and make an entirely larger castle just by combining multiple different versions of this. Moving onwards, you can see this does give you a lot more open areas for the market stalls. And I do kind of want to mention one pretty cool building technique here that I forgot to mention earlier in the review. As you can see, the wall here is actually mounted on a series of hinges where if you actually want to turn it all the way around, it either forms a flat wall, a curved wall, or a 90-degree block wall, which is a very interesting building technique. It allows you to actually have multiple different hinges reaching out of it while still not just making it feel like the side is completely flat. This is probably one of my favorite building techniques in the set itself because there, as you can see, it works really well and definitely makes it feel just that much more special by not just having everything mounted on just one hinge. Alright, so now it's time for the wrap up. This set comes with 4,514 pieces, retails for $400 US, and is priced somewhat similarly in other countries. The price per piece is pretty good at around 7.4 pence or 8.9 cents, so a little bit higher compared to the normal sets nowadays, but it's not bad. I mean, $400 for this many pieces is not bad, and does come with 22 minifigures, most of which are unique to the set, and while some of which do actually reuse some of the collectible minifig stuff and the Black Falcon stuff, most of them are basically just unique to this set. But I do want to bring up some comparison points here. So for context, Ninjago City Gardens came out last year, January 2021, cost $300, so $100 less, and had 1,000 pieces more. Now, that being said, a lot of the pieces here admittedly are larger pieces. I think that these large green saucer pieces obviously cost more than a standard smaller piece. You've got larger ramp elements, of course, large wall blocks to make up the castle, whereas something like Ninjago City Gardens uses a lot of small pieces like little tiles and little tiny pieces to add a lot of detail, whereas this is trying to go for a large castle. But does that really explain the discrepancy between the prices themselves? And that being said, due to this year's price increases, Ninjago City Gardens has been increased to $350. So that makes it $50 less than this, with 1,000 more pieces, but price per piece is not everything. That set also came with a whopping amount of minifigures. It came with 22, so the same amount of figures as this set, just 1,000 more pieces, and now it's $50 less. So I'm kind of curious as to where exactly the value is here. Let's take a look at LEGO's other portfolio to kind of compare this against some other sets. For $400, you can get the big Star Wars Death Star, you can get a lot of other UCS sets, but the question is this worth the price by itself? And to be completely honest, I think it is a little overpriced, but not necessarily to the extent that people have said that it is. And let me explain why. This is again just my opinion. I was not paid to do this. I was not given the set for free, although I sure wish I was. I bought the set of my own money, of my own volition, and I do think that while it is a little overpriced, it's not super bad. And there are a few factors surrounding this. So obviously this is an anniversary set. This was made to celebrate the 90th anniversary of the LEGO group, and it is a massive castle. LEGO knows that castles are popular among AFOLs, and LEGO prices products the way they expect things to sell. Again, I can complain about that, but that also doesn't stop them from pricing it if they believe that people will purchase them. And so, LEGO probably did a lot of market research, realized the biggest market for a classic LEGO theme was castle, and said, let's make a castle at $400 and include this many pieces in it just to be able to sell it. And I think that this set seems to be selling okay. Did not sell out on first day, actually did not sell out at all, which is a little bit disconcerting for castle fans because maybe that means that LEGO will take it the wrong way and assume that maybe people don't want to see castle, which is the wrong message here. I do just think maybe LEGO overvalued it by just a little bit. Now, if this was $350, which is the same price as Ninjago City Gardens, same number of minifigures, obviously 1,000 less pieces, but it has more bigger pieces, and comparing them next to each other, this feels like it has more bulk to it. Ninjago City Gardens is very vertical in its scope. I feel like at $350, this would be a lot more reasonable. Now, people have been asking for $300. People have been asking for $250, $280. And honestly, I think that that is a little bit too low for this, especially taking into account that all of LEGO's product portfolio has been increasing in terms of price. They have been doing a lot of price increases, and this definitely falls in line with those price increases. Is it overpriced by around $50? I would argue yes. Is it overpriced by $100? I don't really know if I would say that. So that is really just my personal opinion, and I of course would love to hear what you think and what your justifications for the price would be in the comments below. And just for fun, I kind of wanted to go through a bit of a thought experiment here and talk about what if some of these sets were sold as their own item. So let's say, for example, LEGO sold this half of the castle as its own set, taking away all the minifigures, just wanting to sell this. And the question was then, is this an $100 set? Not at all. Is it a $200 set? Maybe? I mean, this feels like a solid build. This feels like a big build. And I can see myself paying $200 for this size of stuff, especially if it came with a few minifigures. Let's say half the amount of minifigs came with 11 figures, $200 for this. Yeah, I think that would be a lot fairer, and I think a lot more people would be happier if LEGO, say, made a $200 castle set. Heck, they could have basically just released this, maybe bulked it up a little bit, not made it so vertically thick, but just made it a little bit larger on the sides and closed up that section, called it 200 and called it a day. This, on the other hand, I do not feel is worth $200. Despite having a fantastic interior, you just simply aren't getting as much volume with pieces as you do with this stuff. Obviously, the walls of here are shorter, it doesn't have that much depth, it doesn't have too much stuff going on in the interior compared to a lot of other LEGO builds like modular buildings. The interior is nice, but it's not crazy nice. It is fairly simple after all and fairly compact. This feels a lot closer to $120, $150 to me. And that's kind of what brings me to the overall $150 price point, because considering the development effort that went into designing a set as gargantuan as this, considering all the effort that went into the prints of the set, again, everything is printed, there are no stickers, considering the minifigure design effort and all of the unique minifigs, 21 out of the 22 of which are exclusive to this set, although technically they're all just variations of different characters, but I mean, we did get new prints in terms of the Royal Knights themselves, and we got new prints for the Forest Men, which were reused for the Forest Men gift with purchase, and we got a lot of other medieval torsos that harken back to the older LEGO style, so factoring in all of that, $350 seems fair to me. But then the question lies, I personally believe that LEGO should have just made a $250 castle, maybe a $300 castle, and called it good. I think that if LEGO had put out a 90th anniversary celebration set that was $250, that was $300, even $350, but I would say $250 or $300, that would make it feel a lot more palatable to the general buyer, because even if you're really into LEGO Castle, you have to be really into Castle, have a good amount of disposable income, and be really into LEGO to even consider paying $400 for one item. Especially when, if you look across LEGO's other portfolio, paying a similar amount of money can get you a lot more. Like Ninjago City Gardens, like say even the Star Wars Death Star, like other sets, like if you wanted to even, if you're gonna spend $400, why not spend a little more and get the Ultimate Collector Series Millennium Falcon? I mean, there's a lot of large sets that LEGO's making, and I commend LEGO for their effort to make big sets. Big sets are always really impressive, but if they wanted the castle to do well and make it an anniversary special for the general audience to be able to purchase, I think just simply taking away some of the features, truncating it down just a little bit, maybe even taking out some of the minifigures, and making a $300 or $350 set would have been the best choice of action. Actually, 250 or 300. That being said, I am very curious to see how well this set sells. I am very curious to hear from you. Do you think the set is selling well? Do you have the set yourself? Do you think it's overpriced? And do you wish LEGO made a cheaper set to celebrate the anniversary? Let me know what you think of the overall release of this castle. And thank you all so much for tuning in. This has been a really interesting deep dive into the special 90th anniversary LEGO set, and I do hope you enjoyed this video.
Building LEGO castles has always been one of my favorite types of LEGO structures, and I've done my best to try to collect all of the unique LEGO castles from the many different eras of LEGO, and even build a few custom ones like this one right here, which is a custom one meant to reference the vintage LEGO castle line. But of course, none have come close to this amazing build, which I can definitely recommend. While I did definitely feel like it was a little bit overpriced for what you get, I certainly think that this is the best LEGO castle they ever made. If only they tried to pare it down a little bit and maybe sell it at 300 or 250, sell a slightly smaller castle, I really do think that this would be performing a lot better. But still, that being said, it is very cool to get a massive $400 castle to celebrate 90 years of LEGO, and that about sums up this review. So do let me know down in the comments below, what do you think of this model? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? And of course, what has been your experience putting this amazing model together if you have the pleasure of owning it yourself? I had a blast building and reviewing this amazing castle, and I am very curious to hear what you all think. So again, let me know in the comments, and like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. Thanks, and bye-bye for now.